This session right here is called Teaching, the Core of the Deaf Ministry. And teaching is really a very, very big part of your deaf ministry. And what we're going to end up doing with this session is we will have us together here. We're going to talk about some things this hour. The next hour, we're actually going to teach a class. And everybody gets a chance to teach. But you're not going to be up in front teaching. Don't worry about that. You're going to be teaching with a deaf person present, one-on-one or two-by-two, whatever, something like that. And it's really just a matter of just, I'm going to give you something, I'm going to say, do this. You're going to do that to a deaf person, then the deaf person's going to do it back to you, and you're going to watch how they did it. And then you're going to learn from how they did it, and then you're going to do it again, and they're going to watch you improve. And this is the method that we use. But we're going to talk about teaching, first of all, so that we have a good understanding of what we're going into here. The scripture says, 1 Corinthians 14:19, "Yet in the church I'd rather speak 5 words with my understanding, that by my voice I might teach others also, than 10,000 words in an unknown tongue." I'm sorry. Okay. In sign language, sometimes we speak in all tongues. Okay? And sometimes, I think the point was already made, Jim Bryson mentioned it, is that one person said, "I know more signs than my deaf know. The deaf people in my church know." That's an awkward thing. Because we're not really after sign language. We're after communicating God's truth. We're after trying to communicate the Word of God to people so that they can understand it and live it. We started with this concept the other night and said that deaf people really have a hard time getting the Word of God because it's a written book. And sign language is a visual language. And it makes a great challenge. So if we are going to impart the Word of God into somebody, the way we do that is by teaching more than interpreting. Ted Camp famously said many years ago, he said, "If you give me a chance to interpret in your church or teach in your church, I would much rather teach." Today. It's much more important. By the way, we talked about interpreting and the limitations of interpreting, and the fact that deaf people tolerate us when we interpret. Isn't that true? Even professional interpreters, that happens with. I went in and showed up to one fella. He was in San Antonio, Texas, and he was involved in leadership in the deaf community, and he was interacting with hearing people on the city council. And I went I had been talking to him. I was trying to get him to church, and he said, "Would you please interpret for me at the upcoming city council meeting?" Now keep in mind at this time I was not certified. I was just a church interpreter as far as anybody knew. And so I said, "Well, I'm not certified." He said, "That's okay. I just want you to interpret." I said, "Okay, great. I'll be glad to." And so I showed up to the meeting. We were talking ahead of time, and then 2 ladies in black dresses showed up. Okay, I knew who they were. They were interpreters. And I said, what do you want? I mean, these are the interpreters. This is kind of awkward for me. He said, "Go tell them not to, tell them to leave." I said, "I'm not going to tell them to leave." Not me. I said, "You're going to tell them to leave." So he went back and he said, "Okay, you need to leave." And they said, "Well, you got to sign our paper," because they were going to get paid for 2 hours. 2 hours times 2 interpreters. You can figure that out cost-wise. Probably at that time, close to $20 an hour, and each. So that was $40. That's $80 that they were going to get paid. I was volunteering. This was an awkward situation, and I did not know that was not really to be done at that time. Later I learned and read, okay, you don't do that type of thing. But anyway, once that was done, I said, "Why did you not want those interpreters here?" He said, "I know them. I don't understand them." I understand you. Whoa. And that put things in a big perspective to me. Just because you're certified doesn't mean you're qualified.
That's right.
That's a very big point. Now, I'm speaking to a lot of uncertified people here. Unless you're one of those certified nuts in the crowd, okay? They're like me. So there's a lot of us there are a lot of people that are not certified. And listen, you need to be careful that you do not interpret in a situation that you're not qualified to interpret in. Okay? Check with the laws, check with the people involved, and be qualified for what you're doing. And always keep that in mind. Never interpret outside of where you are qualified. And if you're qualified, sometimes the word certified is required, sometimes the word licensed is required, sometimes it's just the word qualified. So check on that, be sure. But my point is this. Interpreting, just because you're an interpreter does not mean deaf people are going to understand in your church. Sometimes the interpreter stands up and interprets the pastor's message, and deaf people get very little from that. How do I know that? Not from watching other interpreters, from being an interpreter. There are times that I will, in church, when the church service is finished, and I go home and evaluate the job that I've done. By the way, you always ought to do that. You always ought to do the introspection. How did I do? Ask somebody else how you did. It's hard, it's painful, it hurts, but get somebody you can trust to teach, to show you what you need to improve on. I'll go home and there have been times, many times, I'll evaluate my performance as an interpreter, and I'll say, I only got about 60% of that. You know, most of the time, it depends on a lot of factors. I'm not saying I'm a bad interpreter. I'm saying sometimes the message was very complicated, and it was very difficult to get that across in the way it was received by hearing people, in the spur of the moment and rapid pace that was presented, to get that across to deaf people in the same way. Oh, I could sign it all. I signed everything. I signed the concepts. But I'm not sure it came across. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about my skill as an interpreter necessarily, or my sign as a signer. I'm talking about I failed in getting that message across clearly, even at this point in my life, having known sign language since 1976. Okay? It's a challenge. I would much rather be in a deaf class. What we do in our Sunday school class is we have no voice, and anybody that's there, if they're a hearing person, we advise them there's not going to be voice. We can provide a voice interpreter for you if you need that, but I'm not going to voice because I put it into the language of deaf people because that's their class. They need at least one time a week to get things only in their language. And we are filming that, by the way. We're going through the book of Ephesians, and it should be available for y'all to be able to look at in the near future. We're looking forward to that. And so it's an ongoing thing. It'll take us a long time to get through the book. We're going usually verse by verse, explaining words, writing on the board, taking time, explaining. It's all in sign language. It's all in American Sign Language. And it takes our time to do that. Yes, ma'am?
I just wanted to share from an interpreter's perspective. We just have recently, we had our worship service, and sometimes, just as you said, messages are clean, feel good, and you're evaluating, and you feel good. Other times it's so difficult. We have now that hour after the worship to go in our separate deaf room, and we've taken a couple of our deaf and asked them to step up. Hey, can you help us clean this up? Can you clarify? Can you question? Can you see how our deaf, they got it? If there's any confusion, if I wasn't clear, if there's anything else that could help.
That's excellent.
Wonderful help.
That's a great. Now we've talked about thinking out of the box a couple of times in some of the sessions this week. That's a way of thinking out of the box. What can we do to make it so that we get that across? I've heard of one church, what they do is after the pastor's message, the pastor being involved, after lunch they come back and the pastor there, now do you have any questions about the message? And they open it up. Now that's not a deaf setting, that's a hearing setting, but that would work really well. But I wouldn't do that without your pastor or some staff member, there. You don't want to, you're not there to talk about the pastor or what he said necessarily. You're talking about the Bible and what the pastor was saying about the Bible. Be careful about that because it can be political. But I think that's an excellent idea. It's tremendous. Yeah, and what ends up happening is deaf people feel like they can invest in you when you do that. When you open yourself to them, how can I improve? By the way, we're talking about teaching, but we have to get this interpreting concept dealt with first, okay? In our church, and I've shared this before at A.S.L.I, in our church, one Sunday I went up to a couple of deaf ladies that were there. I knew them, and I felt like that their skill was very, they were high-level signers. They knew American Sign Language well, and I didn't feel like they would be too critical. And I said, today, when I interpret, would you please evaluate how I'm interpreting? They said, what do you mean? And I explained, what am I doing wrong? What do I sign that's not clear? And I went through several things. And he said, okay, sure. I normally, when I finish interpreting, I normally sit down in the front pew. And I do that for at least 2 minutes just to relax, get my brain working right, get the blood flowing in my feet again. Although I'm moving, I'm still on my feet and thinking, just to relax just a moment, and then I go and talk to people as I can. So I did not even get to the chair. And they came up and they said, okay, we got ideas for you. And they had this list, and it was a long list. And I'm going, how long have I been interpreting? You know? And so, and many of the things, they had some things like your tie dangles out at the bottom of your coat. Okay, well, okay, you know, they had some of those. But then they had some other thoughts that were really wonderful. It's like, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize I did that. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And numerous things they said, thank you. I said, thank you, that's great. And they looked at me, are you okay? I'm good, keep coming. Because I wanted that information, I wanted that feedback. And what I'm saying is, even at the level I was at that point as an interpreter, they found things wrong with my interpretation. Excellent point. Excellent point. You know, have that evaluation time afterwards. In some way. Now, don't fry people. And if you're going to do this, make sure that the interpreter is a willing participant. Okay? All right, you get what I'm saying? We don't want to talk about the other interpreter, all right? That's not appropriate. If you're going to talk about somebody, you need to talk to them first. Do the Matthew 18 thing. Talk to them first if there's something you need to deal with. Then if it can't get resolved, then go to a couple of people and with them. And if that can't get resolved, then you go to higher levels. But always talk to that person first. So make sure that interpreters are willing to participate. But listen, I hope you are. I hope through what we're saying here, the way we're teaching, is that you get the idea, hey, I need to improve. Because I need to improve. We all need to improve. Nobody's going to be perfect at sign language until we get to heaven, and then we won't need it. So that's just the way it is. So I would rather speak 5 words with understanding than 10,000 in an unknown tongue. It doesn't matter how fast or how beautiful you sign. What matters is, did they get what they needed to get as it was presented? Okay? So, too much time on that probably, but we're going to move quickly now. Some people are, in essence, just themselves, they're a teacher. They love to teach. Let me ask you this question. How many of you just absolutely love to teach? Let me see your hand. Oh, wow, that's a good number. Good number. Okay. How many of you, when you teach, you really have to work at it? Let me see your hands. Okay. You're either in one of those 2 categories, really. You're not going to. Okay. If you're not a natural teacher, if it doesn't just come naturally to you, if it's not a spiritual gift that God's just given you, you could teach anything. You know, nuclear physics, if you just understood it, you could teach it, okay? But you have the ability to take something from a complicated idea and break it down and say, okay, I got this and I can do this. Now, you have to learn the subject matter before you can teach it naturally. But you have that ability to share it. And some people just have that, and others don't. They really have to work at it. That's fine. But let me make this point. All of us are teachers. It's true. You only make a difference in the life of someone when you really want to make a difference. And sometimes those who really have to work at it can do a better job because they are working at it. Sometimes a natural teacher just assumes they can do a good job. Because, well, hey, I know this stuff. I can do this. That's a really a big battle you have to face if you are a natural teacher, if you have the spiritual gift of teaching. Okay? The scripture says in Jude, says, and some having compassion making a difference. It may not be your high level of signs they're coming to watch. Maybe you know Curtis Young. Okay? He's been to ASLI here, I believe, before. He usually has a meeting that conflicts, the week conflicts, and he's not able to come. Physically, he's not able to be out and traveling and doing things right now. But he was called into the deaf ministry as in his late 50s, I would say. That'd be, I guess, I don't know exactly how old he is now, but in his late 50s. He didn't know sign language. So when he began to learn sign language was at a time in his life when it's harder to learn things. He was, he was at that time the vice president of a mission board. And he began to learn it. He learned sign language in 1 year well enough that he preached at the Deaf Baptist Fellowship of America in sign language very slowly. It took guts because he didn't know sign language really well. He had to practice that and work at it. It was really a challenge, and he was slow, but his ideas and concepts he shared were profound, and people enjoyed it and appreciated it. And he said, I don't know why God called me into the deaf ministry. I can't do this stuff well. And I turned and looked at him, and I told him this, and I've told others this, and I told, this is a public statement. I said, Curtis, God did not call you into the deaf ministry for what you can do with your hands. God called you into the deaf ministry for what you can do with your heart. And that one man, not able to travel internationally, is personally responsible. It's his burden and his vision that deaf ministries and deaf churches have been started all across this world. At this point, I think it's 2 deaf churches. It's probably 6 or 8 to 10 deaf ministries in foreign countries without a missionary going there to start that ministry. He's working through a network of churches and international partnership ministries. What an awesome thing. Some of our missionaries have been in some of his meetings and have assisted in that way in other countries. But it's the heart of the matter, of some having compassion making a difference. You will only be as good a teacher as you want to be. Okay? So there's the verse again. Let me show you the pyramid here. In fact, before we do that, let me just do this. Okay, let's go through some of these things here. I have a couple of examples written on this page, and I want you to see this. We said someone has the spiritual gift of teaching right here under the everyone is a teacher, but everyone teaches. When you have kids, you teach. They watch you. You don't have a choice. You are. I think God put that dynamic in our lives on purpose so that we learn how to invest in other people. And you do as a teacher. I put down here L.W. Carlson. This man, L.C. Carlson, I'm sorry. This was my pastor's father in Florida. This man went out and learned sign language. Now, he was much older, and he was not able to learn very well at all. He had a hard time learning sign language. In fact, he was never able to learn sign language well enough to communicate clearly with deaf people. Okay? He went to a local community college and learned signs, came back to our church and had a little class, and we were learning signs from him. And honestly, what happened was we looked at the book and we looked at what he was signing. We said, they're not the same. It was hard for him. But it's because of him that deaf ministry was started. It's because later someone from the Bill Rice Ranch came and taught sign language at our church, and we were able to learn and grow and improve. It's because of him that many, 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 many deaf people have been saved through that ministry in Florida. It's because of him that I'm in the deaf ministry today. I would have not had any exposure to it, other than having a deaf friend when I was in elementary school. I don't know that I would be in ministry today were it not for Brother Carlson. There's John Olson and Vicki Calvin, people that I mentioned that we have influenced over the years. It all goes back to that one man. Okay? And sometimes it is the compassion, sometimes it's the heart of the teacher that gets things done, rather than anything else. There's number 2 example. You don't know this situation, but I know a family that there's and I won't tell you where they live. They're not here this week, and you wouldn't know them. Okay, but they yell at their kids, and then they try to manipulate every little situation and make it to their own benefit, and the family's having problems, and it's just this way and that, and you know what? The kids are going to be becoming just like the parents. You may know that family, by the way. Not the same name, different name, different faces, different family, but you may know that. You've seen it. Everybody's a teacher, for good or for bad, is what I'm saying. And by the way, deaf people are watching you in your church. They're watching you, how you're going to respond to situations, how you're going to respond when the interpreters do something that you don't, whoa, that hurt my feelings. How are you going to respond? They're watching you. Okay? Both are teachers. Okay? Number 1 here, you're a teacher because someone is learning from you. Number 2, below that, you have difference. You make a difference when I only make a difference. I want to make a difference. Okay? Number 3, never underestimate the value of your influence. When we're talking about children, you're influencing those kids 24/7. They're watching mom and dad. Never underestimate that. But listen, in your deaf ministry, you say, well, I'm not a good signer. Don't underestimate the value of your influence. They're watching you because you're hearing, you've been in church for a while. They may be new in church. They may be going through a struggle. They want to see how you deal with it. Okay? You are a teacher. Keep in mind that teaching is not just standing in front of a class. Teaching is what you do daily. Some of us have to work at it when we stand in front of a class, okay? It's hard to stand in front of people, but you are consistently a teacher. Now, let's consider the learning pyramid. Let's get there. If you'll notice this, this is a pretty amazing thing. I've shared, I think, did I share this last year with you? I don't think I did in ASLI, okay? I've shared it somewhere else. I want to share this with you. This is the teaching pyramid. If you just Google this image, you'll get it. I didn't put it in our notes. If you just Google it, you'll find it. It's all over the internet. In pictures, if you do Google Images, you'll see teaching pyramid. You'll just see a bunch of different concepts of it. It's all about the same. If you want somebody to learn, and all we're doing is lecturing, okay, if that's all you do in the class. By the way, we participate in we have you do these exercises. Yesterday, even with the gospel, we had you, okay, tell your story to somebody else, tell your story to somebody else. There's a reason we did that. If it's only lecture, only 5% are going to get that and retain it. Now, they may understand it now, but they may not retain it because they didn't have to be involved. Then, if it goes down to reading, if you include the Word of God, if you include handouts, or if you actually have a person reading a text, they may get and retain 10%. If it's an audio-visual thing, by the way, you've got this. If it's music, if it's something that is presented in a different fashion, then you jump all the way up to about 20%. If it's demonstration, if you actually take something up here and demonstrate it, it goes up to 30%. Let me stop. This is cool. I was in college, and we had to do a demonstration speech. And one fella said, I'm going to demonstrate how to fix drywall. And he brought all this stuff in to fix drywall. He brought in a block of drywall, and he punched a hole in it. Said, here's how you fix that. And then he went and did all the mudding and preparation work and cut a piece to fit the thing. And he showed how he did everything. And you cut this piece with a little lip on the outside of it. And here's how you smooth it all out. He did the whole demonstration speech. I forget how long the demo speech was, but he did the whole thing in that period of time. And I thought, well, okay, cool. Drywall. One of the first things I did was become a pastor of the deaf, and I was teaching in a Christian school at the same time. We had a hole in one of our walls. And I said, and the pastor's trying to debate, well, what are we going to do? How are we going to get people in here to fix this? You know, who should we get? And I said, Pastor, could I try? You don't have to do it. I said, give me a shot. And do you know what? I fixed that wall. Now, it was the first drywall job I'd ever done. It didn't look too pretty, really. It didn't look perfect. But it was fixed, and there was no hole in the wall. Now, that came from demonstration. I didn't even touch it. But because it had been demonstrated, it happened. I don't mean to, don't misunderstand this point here, okay? I'm going to talk about an illustration I did here at ASLI. We had a guy over here jump to the moon, jump to the piano, jump out, and no, you know, and it didn't work. And then the devil came and pushed him down, and then we didn't set that up. But he said, I saw him talking ahead of time. I knew something was going on, but and then pick up and carry the guy. And that type of demonstration is going to people are going to remember that. Okay, a lot of that was a spur of the moment, by the way. We didn't plan all that out. It just happened. Okay, I kind of knew where we were going, but I didn't know how it was going to happen. And the Lord's involved in stuff like that, you know. And so that demonstration stays with people. It really does. Our classes need to be not just like, you know, just teaching the words. We need to demonstrate. Okay, then you have discussion group. By the way, what do deaf people love to do during class? Talk, discuss, throw in their ideas. We've got one guy, I'll say something, he'll say, I got an illustration, and he'll stand up and he'll tell a story from his life, and it takes 10 minutes to tell a story. Maybe 5 minutes if we're lucky. And he tells this story, and hey, and people are going, yeah, and they're getting it, and they're discussing it. Or somebody will say, wait, I got a question. Do you mean, and oh, no, I don't mean that, I mean this. Oh, you mean this. And then somebody else says, no, here's what he's trying to say. And they talk it all through, and all of a sudden they're getting it. And it didn't matter whether the teacher said it right or not. They finally got it. Because it worked beyond the teacher's limitations. And these people were working it out themselves. And by the way, they're going to have to do that on a daily basis when they leave our classes anyway. They're going to have to work out the Word of God in their minds and their hearts. Here's what I'm supposed to do because the Bible says it. And what better place to do it than in our classes to help them? And then practice by doing. When they actually do that thing, whatever it is, they learn. We had one class we were teaching to deaf people about, it was the word thank you. We spent a whole, I think it was an hour, teaching the word thank you. How do you do the word thank you? How do you say thanks? Because quite frankly, many of the deaf people in our area, I won't speak for your deaf people, but the deaf people in your area, I shouldn't call it, I'm trying not to say your deaf people, my deaf people, it's not, but you understand what I'm saying. The people we're involved with, my church is not my church, you know, and my ministry is not my ministry, it's all God's anyway, okay? But the deaf people in our area had a hard time with the thank you thing. They didn't say thank you to their interpreters. They didn't say thank you when somebody gave them some money or anything. They didn't say thank you this. We thought we'd teach you the word thank you. So we went through and talked and gave Bible examples and all of that. I said, okay, now, here's some thank you notes. Write thank you to somebody who's been a help and a blessing to you. You should have seen it. People were looking at like, who? Who should I write to? I said, somebody that's done something good for you. I know somebody's done something good to these people. There's no question about it, okay? You have people that have done good things to you, and you write a thank you note and all. So they couldn't get it. And I said, okay, your interpreters. I didn't mean for them to write to me. I was talking about somebody else. But one guy wrote a thank you note and gave it to me. I was grateful. And he got the idea. Learn by doing. When they do it, when they practice it, when they're on that level of, they practice it because they did it, then they can do it again. It was sometime later, one of the deaf men, the pastor had done something special for one of the men in the church, deaf man. This deaf man, pastor came up to me, and after all of this had been transpired, pastor came up to me and said, "You'll never guess what happened." I said, "What?" He said, "I found a thank you note in my truck." Now we're in the South, leave your door open, okay, you know. So he had, in the parking lot after church, you know, he found a thank you note on his front seat in his truck. He said, it was from a deaf man. He named the man. I said, wow, that's good. Learn by doing. So it's valuable. So we have to not only say things, but we have to engage the people that are in front of us so they can do it as well. And then the other is teaching others. And we're actually going to do this part today. Okay? When you get down to the teaching others part, you're going to retain 90% of what you learned in that situation. One of the best ways to learn the Bible is to teach the Bible. And everybody's afraid of doing that. I don't know anything about it. Yeah, but you will after you teach it. Isn't that true? Okay, those of you who have, and you go through and you learn it. Oh, I didn't know this. Diana's always telling me things she's learning. I'm always telling Diane things, you know, I'm learning. It's cool because you're getting things because you're preparing, you're studying, you're getting ready to give something to somebody else. And it helps. So learn by doing. All right? So let me share with you a concept of knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. All right? Knowledge is the facts of something. I have this on this, yeah, there it is, okay? We're drawing this from Proverbs chapter 2, and where it says, my son, if thou wilt receive my words and hide my commandments with thee, so that thou incline thine ear unto wisdom and apply thy heart to understanding, yea, if thou criest after knowledge, and liftest up thy voice for understanding, if thou seekest for her silver and searchest for her as for hid treasures, then shalt thou understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. Three concepts here. Knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Okay? Knowledge is just facts. By the way, in our Sunday school classes, don't limit your class just to facts. God made Adam and Eve. There were 6 days of creation. There weren't 7 days of creation, by the way. There were 6 days of creation. Seventh day, what did God do? Rest. And what does rest mean? Not work. Okay, he stopped. That means it was ended. That means there were no other days of creation after that. Okay? Think about that. It helps answer some Bible questions. Okay? So, but don't just give them facts. Take it to a logical extreme. Go beyond the facts. Knowledge is good. People have to have knowledge to function. But then the second level is understanding. And understanding is how it works. If you get, we were talking this morning at the breakfast table. One of the young people, Maggie, came out with a flashlight, And she was just flashing them everywhere, and I said, do you like flashlights? She said, yes, I do too. And Diane looked at her and said, that is an understatement. All my life I've been around flashlights. When I was a little kid, I'd get a flashlight for Christmas every year. My mom and dad, when I was a teenager, they would tease me about that. And the first thing I would do with that flashlight is open it up, take it apart, see how it works, see what all the parts are, and make sure I understood it. Because I want to understand that flashlight. Hey, that's just me. I'm so glad I don't do that with my new car. I'll trust that they got it right, okay? But understanding is when you get it. Now, knowledge is how to get, if you're looking at a map, knowledge is how to get from this point to that point. Understanding is when you're in the airplane or the hot air balloon or on the little mountainside and you look down and say, okay, I get this, how it's laid all out. I know why the roads are the way they are. Wisdom is either being able to design the roads or draw a map from memory. It's not just knowledge. It's to say, no, if they go that way, that's not, no, we don't want to do, we're going to take them this way. That's wisdom because you're taking, they would have a hard time with this and you're putting all of that into practice. That's what wisdom is. Knowledge is understanding the facts of the Bible. Understanding is seeing how they work out in your life. Wisdom is being able to apply them in a life situation that's not specifically spelled out in Scripture. Okay, in a life situation you face in today's culture. Knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. By the way, that's what we're after for deaf people. Why did I put that in there? We want to lead deaf people to that wisdom part. If you're only aiming for knowledge, you're only going to get knowledge. If you're only aiming for understanding, you're only going to get understanding. I want them to know how to run their family. I want them to know how to run to God. I want them to carry on the torch after I'm gone. I want them to become preachers and teachers, and I want them to be solid Christians. I want them to win people to Christ. All these different things. They need to get this. And they need wisdom in order to do it. That's why we're talking about teaching. Okay. You are a teacher because someone is learning from you. I already stated that in the notes earlier. Okay. So teaching a deaf class. Let's talk about preparing and all these things, the elements of a class, and then we're going to do some more. Okay? Preparation, teaching, closing, and then what's happening next week. So let's get to that point. All right? These notes were adapted from something that Ted Kemp wrote, and so I just added a little bit to it, and I think it's very helpful. First of all, study. In preparation, you need to study. It goes without saying, we all know that we have to get more knowledge about something. You need to certainly know more about it than the people you're teaching. That can be very embarrassing if they start giving you information back. By the way, one time we had started a deaf ministry in a church. I won't even tell you what state it's in. I don't want to embarrass the church. And we started a deaf ministry in this church, and we went back to kind of follow up, and the teacher that Sunday was sharing about the books of the Bible. And the teacher shared that there were I think it was 25 books in the New Testament, 74 or something in the Old Testament. It's like the numbers were just all wrong. All wrong. And it wasn't that they were reading other books into the Bible or messing things. No, they just didn't know. The person just didn't know. It's like, okay. You know. And by the way, you can't fix ignorance. If a person wants to be dumb on purpose, you can't help it. Now, I'm not saying we were gracious and tried to be helpful as much as we possibly could in that situation, but we certainly didn't correct the person in front of anybody. But you need to study. You need to know what you're talking about. You need to know the verse. And by the way, if somebody points out something that you did not know, then treat that, oh, that's awesome. Thank you. Oh, that's great idea. I didn't know that. Thank you very much. Or, oh, thank you for saying that. That's great. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Or somebody says something you think it makes. That's neat. I'm going to study that this week. I'm going to look more at that this week. You've really given me a good idea. And then learn. And, oh, they were right. Or, oh, they were reading something from some other doctrine on that. Let's fix that this next week in class. And come back in with more knowledge and teach. Because we're all about learning the truth. Okay, so you study. Pictures, by the way, are awesome. The internet is just such a wonderful resource. And I'll just say this, for your own personal use, most pictures are fine. If you're going to publish or print them, you probably need to get permission from different people to do that. In your church library or resources, Solid Ministries materials, of course, we have a wide variety of things that can be helpful to you. And so if you have a question, do y'all have anything on, give us a call or fire us an email. And we'll be glad to answer that. And we have that happen all the time. People say, do you have something that would help with this situation we're dealing with? Or I'm trying to teach this. Do you have anything in that regard? That, by the way, that helps us know what else we need to produce if we don't have something that needs to be addressed. Create student notes. By the way, having an outline with student notes is fabulous. It helps students learn. Give them notes. Now, you might consider, here in some of the classes we've given you underlines to fill in. Yeah, people like that. But don't do too much because their eyes are going down and up and down and up, and you need to keep their eyes focused on what you're talking about. So make that limited if you do that. One of the things I've really enjoyed doing is taking a Bible verse and I just write the verse out up to a certain word I'm going to explain. I bold that word, put a dash, and then explain it. Then I go down to the next line and start the verse from that point on until I get to a word I'm going to explain. I bold that word, put a dash, and explain it. Then go down to the next line and continue the verse and it may take 6 or 8 lines to get the verse explained, but I'm bringing out the hard words or hard concepts or important points that they need to know in order to apply that verse to their lives. You had a question?
Yeah, because we've kind of discussed this before too about notes, but I'm just wondering, is it hard for them with the English language to?
Okay. Let me show you those notes. Give me just a second. I'll bring it up here and show you what we're talking about here. Yes, it is, and we need to make sure we write in simple English format so that deaf will understand. Oopsie baby, sorry about that. Loose connection. We'd go home and say that teacher had a loose connection. I'll just show you. Okay, I'll show you the one I'm working on right now. How about that? All right. This is. Okay, I'm not going to take the time to position it or anything on there. But here's we're going through the book of Ephesians. Okay, so chapter 2, verse 4. This is in the middle of the notes. I already given out several other notes, pages of notes, and so it says, "But God, who is rich," put a hyphen. Now, in mercy for His great love wherewith He loved us. That's the verse. Rich, make it bold. Then abounding with, wealthy, have to have plenty. So then I explain what rich means. It doesn't mean, we use contrasting. It doesn't mean rich money. No. God rich money, yes. But God's rich what? Mercy. Money. Rich person can. Easy. They're rich. They can give out money. God, mercy. Do that comparison there. Yeah.
So you hand them the notes and then you go down
Exactly.
and explain each thing to them.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and actually I give them.
So it's not like I'm handing out notes. You explain every single thing.
Oh yeah. It's not a college class at all. It's not like we can take this home and study it. It's not that. No, we're going to go through and explain all these notes. And so in that session, we covered this verse. About 30 minutes of teaching, we covered that one verse. Okay? And you think if you look at the Sunday school lessons out there, there's a whole page that you're supposed to cover in a Sunday school class. You say, that's not very much, I can get through that in 10 minutes. Oh no.
3 weeks.
I know you can't because you're smart. And that's what everybody will go away thinking. They're smart. Okay? But what you really want them to go away thinking is, wow, God's good. And so what we need to do is slow down and be really, and we just take our time. On this next verse here, even when we were dead in sins, dead in sin, unsaved, no life in Christ, heart dead. And we go there and just explain, just talk about that. Your sin. When a person is a sinner, they're out there in the world, they're not saved, or maybe here in the church, but sinner. They didn't accept Jesus Christ. They're sin. What do we do? That person, heart alive, enjoy, fellowship with God. No, dead. Heart dead? No, not heart attack. No, heart dead means heart, no life. Okay, heart. But they're happy. But face. Inside heart, dead. Dead with sin. And this type of thing. Don't do it in English. And I'm giving you the voice, the words, so you'll follow what I'm saying. But even it would be even more so ASL without my having done that right there, you see. So you can, if you take your voice off, you can actually get that point across clearly. If you sign just like you see them sign. Okay. Yes?
Just a note, in Spanish, that verse, por cuanto todos pecaron, están destituidos, they are separated.
Destituidos, yeah.
And so to me, with the deaf having it separated, Adam and Eve, they're with God, and when they sinned, they were separated, far away. God is over here, He's holy, He's clean. I'm here, I'm a sinner, I'm separated,
Yeah.
I'm far away, I'm dead.
Yeah, and in fact, when we describe this verse, it is the concept is, okay, person dead. Can they talk to them? No. Separate. What means die? And in fact, we actually did teach that verse already. That was the next verse we taught, so I forgot we already taught it. And what we did say is what means die? It means your body, okay? Where are you? Person die can come back and say, oh, Mom, I forgot to tell you. No. Dead. Separate. And we explained that concept right there. That's awesome. And by the way, if you read another language, sometimes you can get a lot more out of something like this. Sometimes it's good in your devotions even to read your Bible in sign language. How would I sign that? It really makes you stop and think about it. And by the way, it'll do this to your heart. Your heart will just go, wow, I never realized that. Putting it in a different way so that you can be clear on it. So that's the kind of thing. Now here, hath raised us up together. And then we're going to talk about 2 different resurrections. That's going to be a hard one to do. That may take 2 sessions, I don't know. But I'm hoping we can get through it in 1. Raised us up together, meaning spiritually we're raised together, physically we will be raised together. Okay, the resurrection. But spiritually we have new life already in Christ. Our separation has finished, we're together now. And all of that. So you want to see the rest of it, okay? See if I can do that.
Slide it over.
I know. Let's see what we can do. It's easier said than done because everything's reversed when I'm doing this.
There we go.
Okay, all right. There you go. So,
Some more.
yeah, and to check with other resources. I mean, when I study for this, it's not like coming out of my head. You take other resources and do it and put those, here's what that word. Some Bibles will have down at the bottom they'll explain, or in the margin they'll explain, or you can go to Strong's Concordance and find out what those words mean, or you can go. Now some verses are better studied in a concordance manner. What do those words mean? Some are studied in a commentary. What does that whole thing mean? How does that all apply to anything? And so when you get resources, you mentioned the Amplified Bible, but just take other things that will take that and expand it so you can get it. Okay, and be consistent with your church. Whatever your church uses and does, do that. But don't just stop with, okay, no, take the time to write it. We use a whiteboard. Whiteboard is about the size width-wise as this screen. Okay, it's like a 4x8 sheet of plywood, or sheet of board, laminate board. And so there are some days when I'm teaching, there will be stuff all over that whole board. I mean, it'll be scattered. I'll be looking for a little small spot to write something. And hey, it's there. We ought to use it. It's visual. Then they can look at it. Some deaf will come up afterwards and say, don't erase, don't erase. And they go like this, and they take a picture of it. Because they want to go home and study it. We've got one guy, we've got 2 guys, that will go home and type up their notes. They'll write notes on this, and they'll go home and type it all up. Cool. They didn't used to do that. One of them didn't used to do that at all. The other one did, and he's been doing that for years. But the other one had never been to Bible college or never done anything. And he started seeing this other guy do this. He said, that's a good way to learn. And he would go home and type up his notes. And he doesn't use computers, so he was typing up on a typewriter. It's like, wow, that's cool. But the point is, if you give it to them, if you teach them and give them the notes, then they're going to be able to okay, you can start that one again. Okay, give me a second. Let's try that. Yes, okay. All right, is that where we were? Okay. So the notes. By the way, we were talking about interpreting, but interpreting, it's not a bad idea to have somebody take notes of the pastor's message. and pass it out. Okay, that can be very helpful as well. We've been in churches that will do that. Somebody in the church will take it upon themselves as a ministry to do that. And they'll write out simple, you teach them how to write simple things and how to make it so that deaf will understand this. Yes, back there.
We do have the blessings, or it is a blessing that give us his outline prior to service, but we do not copy it until after the service for the deaf who want it, because if they have the copy beforehand, they'll be reading it through the whole time. They're like,
he missed that point, you know.
or he's like, I'm kind of, or just something was said, and they're like looking at that and looking at you. I'm like,
you got to be careful because deaf people will tend to do that. They'll make, if you miss something in your notes, well, you do the same thing. I missed something in the wait, what was that one? Because you just want to. That's just human nature. But you do want to be careful. Even if it's the pastor's notes, sometimes the pastor writes notes for himself, the way he can think about it, and he's not necessarily writing so that other people can follow it. If he is, that's great. But I'm just saying that for the benefit of others that are here.
We had other interpreters who would ask for his notes, so they actually break whoever's doing message usually gets that and goes through, and I usually do it to find out like what words
are going to be used.
And if there's a question, I can always ask.
So what is being said? What is being, what's his plan? That's helpful to know. Okay, there was another hand right here.
I was just wondering do you ever have problems with you're explaining each complicated word out so clearly? Do you ever have problems making them feel inferior or you're talking to kids or something?
No, and I tend not to. And personally, if you ask a personal question, it is very, very possible, yes. One of the things that I will do is I'll explain right through now. There takes a time to get a rapport in doing this. Once you establish that rapport, you're pretty good. I do not personally look down upon deaf people. I treat deaf people as equal. Alan Sneer brought me my coffee this morning. I was like, "Guy, you don't need to do that." But thank you, I appreciate it, because I didn't have time to get down there and get it. He saw that, he brought it to me. I'm thinking, that he's not my servant. And yet he's got a servant's heart, and he does that. And I was thankful for that. And so, but always treat them with high respect, and they will recognize that. That will help you get past them. Go ahead.
I was just because a lot of the people that I'm around are more special needs people that might happen to be hard of hearing or something, so I've been assigned to them. But because if they have mental disabilities or something, it's sometimes more of a struggle to not treat them.
It is.
Or explain it like you're explaining it to a kid.
It is. Because you don't know, unless you're familiar with that need, unless you know what you need to do with that need. Yeah, if you have special needs people, do what you need to do to be on their level educationally or emotionally, as the case may be. But it's difficult. A lot of people will look down. If somebody's different to them, they'll look down on that person. We do that in language. When there's a different language, all of a sudden you start adjusting down, and it's hard to maintain a mental respect. I say it this way: we are teaching adults with simple language. And if we keep that in mind, who we're teaching. Now, if you have children or other special needs, then keep in mind, here's who I'm teaching. Like for example, cerebral palsy. I say about cerebral palsy, this is a mindset. This is a mindset that people need to understand about deafness as well. But with cerebral palsy, I say, that guy is stuck in a body that doesn't obey him.
Right.
And if you look at it that way, you don't look down on a cerebral palsy person, you have compassion on them. Okay? You see people that don't have knowledge that you have in certain areas, and you look at them and say, you don't look at them and say, they shouldn't do that. You look at them and say, wow, nobody ever taught them.
Right.
And that's a compassion, because we don't look down on people. And that's a great point, so thank you for bringing that out. And I hope we address that adequately on that. Yes?
Well, with what she said, we have two deaf. We have a 81-year-old man who is very brilliant. He worked in aerospace all of his life until he retired. He learned the Bible by reading the Bible. He never had an interpreter until 18 and a half years ago when I started interpreting in our church, which he loves being able to sit in church and hear God's word now. But Crystal, my daughter, has learning disabilities. But don't treat her that way, because if you do, she knows you're treating her that way. She's 33 years old, she's an adult. You know, but at the same time, when I'm interpreting, I have to make sure that I'm using language that she's gonna comprehend. Because she can't comprehend words that Harry understands.
Often, yeah, like for example, treat Crystal, for example, as if Jim Braceland came up and asked you a question. Answer it the same way, but choose words differently.
Right, exactly, yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
It's that mindset that we have to keep in mind, because we are teaching adults. Most of our deaf ministries have adults in them. So we have to keep in mind that we're doing this, but as we do it in a way that they are going to get it. And by the way, if you put yourself in that level and you talk that way, I mean, I try not to use words that they don't understand. And if you do, like, oh, sorry, hearing word, and then go back and change it.
Right.
And we choose, when we write on the board, write those words that they understand. Choose ways that they understand. Make it simple. But the simple does not necessarily mean insulting. And that's a good point. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to rush through the rest of this, if we can, real quickly here. Use whiteboards for the presentation. I mentioned that. Then, methods you can consider about this, okay? The whiteboard, PowerPoint. Did I say whiteboard already? Okay. Yeah, it's important. Okay? That's why it's in the notes twice. Pictures. Did I say all that again? Okay, well, I'm sorry. Okay. No, I'm not. Okay? And then methods. Ask questions. Allow comments. Explain words. Limit your content. By the way, just because your lesson is a full page long does not mean you have to cover your lesson. You saw this page here that we're talking about. That page, not that page, that page. You see all that? I have all that. I may give them the whole page of notes. And we're here this week, and then next week I'll have more copied, so if they didn't bring it, then we're here this week. Next week, we may be on this 3 months, 2 months. Now, granted, I'm not in every Sunday, okay? And I'm only teaching this when I'm there. And others are not teaching the same lesson. They teach their own lessons when we're gone. It's kind of a unique setting in our part, but... Okay, let's see what's going on. We'll get there. All right. There we are. Okay, let's get back to where we were and where we are. Okay. Open with something exciting and positive. Say something. By the way, Dr. Bill Rice, the Bill Rice Ranch, said this: if you tell people they're having a good time, they will. Did you notice this morning I said, isn't this a great day? It's like, you know, and everybody going, oh, you're right, yeah. But eventually you're going to get it. You wake up about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh, we've already finished, haven't we? Okay, well. But seriously, in your Sunday school class, if you start positive and you maintain a positive thing through your whole class, they're going to enjoy that. They really are. And so these are some statements that you could use, and when you have those in your notes. And then teach at least one good point each lesson. What I mean by that is make sure there's something that's a Bible principle that they can walk away with and say, okay, that's what I'm going to do this week. If you teach all facts, they don't have anything to go home with. Give them something they can go home with. Not just more knowledge. Give them something that can actually change their life that week, if at all possible. And most of the time it is. Teach principles, not just words and facts, and then try to avoid spelling. The more you spell, the less they understand. Spelling, you notice deaf people spelling to deaf people. They go, huh? Okay, will you spell it? Oh, where? You tell me again. You know, it's just that way. It's an accepted miscommunication. So, and spelling is valuable in its right setting. Okay? Be sure to repeat key thoughts several times. I think we've done that here in the class. Make sure your students understand before you proceed. In other words, now we're not doing that right now, okay? Don't rush through it. Stop, take your time, finish the thought, get it clearly done, then move on, okay? Only when they understand will they feel free, will their brains be free, and their hearts be free to move to a new concept. If you move to a new concept and they're still thinking about the old one, you're going to confuse people. This is not just deaf. This is not just that. One preacher came up to me, he said, he was a young preacher, and he said, now, brother, you've been in the ministry for all these years and all that, and made me feel old, you know, and said, what advice, after hearing me preach, what piece of advice would you give me? He didn't like what I said. I said, brother, slow down. I said, you may be able to say it that fast, but they can't listen that fast. You know, and I was just being honest, and he thanked me for that. I mean, he wasn't mad or anything. But I don't know if it made a difference, but that is true. We go too fast sometimes. And then, well, the last thing there, you see, repeat, rephrase, reiterate, all mean the same thing. Do it again and again, over and over again, repetitively, redundantly. Okay. And then, now, here's what we're going to do. Well, sorry, ways to teach. Let's get to the closing. We've got 5 minutes. We'll do that. Okay, the story, using pictures, with a point. You can study verse by verse. You can study by topic. There are words to describe these. You know, you can do expositional. You can do topical messages. You can do. There's another one. Anyway, so there are words for all these things, and the words may not be that important. But teach. I like to teach verse by verse. But you may have a topic you want to cover. Great. You know, especially at Christmas time, Easter, special times of the year, mission conference. Then this is time to take a topic and teach that topic. Right? So different ways you can teach. And then when you're closing, at the closing of your class, by the way, don't just stop. Okay, I got through it. You know, have a time at the end where you can bring it to a close. There's something you've learned or they've learned. Okay? Review what has been taught. I said earlier, say it again. First I tells them what I was going to tell them, then I tells them, then I tells them what I told them. Pardon me for being from the South, okay? But that's the truth. That's the way you go out doing it. And so review. Let them tell you back what you just said. Somebody come up and summarize what we taught about today. Somebody, and, you know, and maybe they will, maybe they won't. Or what did you do? One thing. What did you learn today? One thing. And see if they learn. If nobody says anything, then go back home and cry. And then fix it and come back and try again next week. Okay? Refer back to the important points. When you're closing, say, now today we talked about this and this and this. By the way, you might do all of this review before you ask for them to give you feedback. Because then you've told them what you told them, then you told them, and you tell them what you told them, and then they come back and say, they tell you what you told them. And sometimes they tell you what you told them is different than what you told them. There is the Holy Spirit in this, you know. And sometimes they said, I need to apologize to, you know, say, oh wow, where'd that come from? But they learned that God was working on them on something you weren't teaching. It works that way, it's cool. Okay? And then close with a challenge and an application of those thoughts. Close with something. Now, next week when we come, we're going to study this. No, not A.S.L.I. next week, okay. But, no, next week, when you get here next week, not here, A.S.L.I., but when you get to the class next week, review what was taught. Ask questions, ask if they have any questions from what was taught. So you're asking questions to see what they remembered, then you're asking them, do you have any questions? Is there something that you want to ask me about? And then remind them what you said, and review the notes on the whiteboard before class if you need to. There are some lessons that you just need to start with what you said last week before you can say what you say this week. Some lessons you don't have to do that with. Some sessions you say, you've got the notes, look at this, okay, remember 1, 2, 3, okay. Now, let's move on to this and all that. So do a review ahead of time if necessary. And then we're going to get into some practice here in just a minute. Okay. So what I told you was, well, this, okay. Now, do you have any questions and comments? Let's take her first and you second, okay?
How should I handle when I'm speaking with a deaf person and I don't quite understand what they're signing to me, but I don't want to ignore them? Like, I've had an opportunity to teach a class and I kind of did that same thing. I just kind of got through it or whatever, and then when they were talking back to me,
Okay. Great
Great
question. Great question. All right. You feel like, I can do this, but they can't do this. Like, no. I'm exaggerating, but that's what you're addressing. So, one thing is leave plenty of time for that awkward time. Leave plenty of time for that. Because what you want to do is you want to go slow enough and ask them to slow down until you do get it. What that says beyond anything else is, I care about your question. And your question is more important than my lesson. It's huge. And so if you will just leave time for that and then just sit there and watch them, and you're not getting it, stop and wait. Say that again. Okay, what does it mean, this sign, whatever sign they use, what does that mean? Okay, all right, say it again. And then look at another deaf person. You explain it to me. I don't understand. They don't get insulted by that at all. That's not insulting at all. Because understanding is one of the key elements in deaf communication. They appreciate understanding. The other word used was ignore them, or I think was the word ignore.
Like they're talking and sometimes you can't quite make up and sign, make it clear as to what they're signing. I'm
Right.
still trying to figure out what,
Yeah, and you
And so sometimes I find myself just kind of like staring or,
yeah.
I don't know if I
Yeah.
should nod and,
Yeah.
or just like.
So you want to change that behavior.
I'm looking at it, but it's kind of like, oh, I don't quite understand. I'm
Yeah,
thinking
that's
to
okay.
myself, I don't understand what
That's
they're
okay.
signing.
Stop them and ask questions. That it is more respectful for you to, in the hearing world, we just kind of nod and we just kind of go on, okay? Deaf world, it is better to ask questions than to do the nod thing. Yeah,
Well,
much
you
better.
can't learn
Yeah.
if you
You'll notice a difference like immediately. And they will engage with you and they'll say, oh, person doesn't understand. We'll teach them. And they will jump on you and start teaching in a good way and start teaching. But open yourself to that. Be open. I meant that in a positive light actually. I really did. So, but they will focus on you. They will say, okay, let me help you. And you'll find that you do have to leave plenty of time for that. But they'll love that. That will draw them to you in a big way. Okay? All right. And it's time to close quick.
Quick question. I still have a deaf person that when asking questions or trying to make sure they're understanding what's going on, whether it's in Sunday school class, message, women's Bible study, this person does not engage back. I've built a rapport with the person, I build a relationship with the person, but still this person does not, when it comes to like a discussion, she's always, you understand? But you're like, are you really understanding?
Yeah.
Because I want the feedback to know that she's understanding what's being coming across. Do you know another way that I've done all that I know I can do to build a relationship, so that the person can trust me.
Right. Some people are just shy. Diane teaches a Sunday school class, and she says the hardest thing in the world is a hearing class. And she said the hardest thing in the world is to get these ladies to ask questions. They will not talk about it. And so those are hearing people, adults. And some people are just shy. They don't want to tell you what they know because they have been embarrassed in the past. They don't want to open themselves to that. So respect that. But ask them specific questions. We have one guy in our class, he would never ask questions, never. I started doing this verse by verse study, and I started responding to, as we're teaching, he's got a question. Oh, you got a question. And just in the middle of the teaching, let him ask his questions. And now he will raise his hand and ask questions.
You even have a deaf ask her questions. Karen will ask questions, and she's like,
yeah.
right.
So back up and try to and maybe personally get to know the person personally more, how you can get into that hard shell. But it's a challenge. And people have the right to be shy. Put me on a plane next to somebody I don't know. Let me have my right to be shy. It's hard for some of us. Okay.